14 months. 14 months at $15 a month. Doing just a little bit of math, that is $210. What could you buy with $210? You could buy one of those new AMD RX 480s at $229. You could buy 3 full-priced games, which probably will contain more content. But to justify if Hellfire Citadel, now celebrating its first birthday, is worth $210, we need to dig into the heart of what a subscription fee is. That's right, we're talking about content droughts. For those of you who have no idea what I'm talking about, and that is perfectly acceptable in this situation, Hellfire Citadel, or Content Patch 6.2 for World of Warcraft, came out on June 23rd of 2015, which you might notice was about 2 weeks ago. So happy birthday, Hellfire Citadel, you're now a year old. There's been no major content patch since. Therefore, going into Legion's release on August 30th, Hellfire Citadel will have been current content for 14 months. Today I want to try and ask and answer the question, is this acceptable in a subscription MMORPG? But let's look at the subscription fee itself first before we answer that question. What is a subscription fee, and why do so many MMOs, or nowadays so few MMOs, decide to charge it? Subscription fees really came about in the MMORPG context with the first generation of MMOs, games like Meridian 59 and Ultima Online. Back then, hosting thousands of players through a server-based architecture in a virtual world was crazy expensive. The subscription fee was therefore born out of necessity to keep the lights on, essentially. We accepted these subscription fees, and in return, we got an entire world to play in. It seemed right, so much content, and we got to experience it all and enjoy it for a small fee of $15 per month. But content does not last forever. Despite the ideas that MMORPGs are supposed to be these persistent and enduring virtual worlds. Eventually, games like EverQuest decided to start releasing a lot of expansions, like a lot of them. EverQuest has like 16 billion expansions at this point, I swear to God. But games like EverQuest would continually release expansions to keep the content up to date and give people more to play, therefore justifying their $15 a month. Being that content patches weren't really feasible in the late 90s, as a lot of people were still running on pre-broadband technology, delivering a huge 2GB patch that might update the game world with new zones and dungeons wasn't in the cards back then, so expansion packs and the delivery and distribution costs associated with them became a pretty regular thing for a lot of games. With the second generation of MMORPGs a few years later, MMOs decided to ditch the 22 expansion pack model of EverQuest and instead opted for a slower drip of content through content patches. Games like City of Heroes and Final Fantasy XI took advantage of this system in between a longer expansion pack cycle. And then, of course, World of Warcraft came to adopt these systems into its own in the current third generation of MMOs. Warcraft's content patch system has since become the standard, adopted by many other MMORPGs to this day. It's been over 20 years since Meridian 59 and more than 10 years since World of Warcraft, though, and server costs have dropped dramatically. This is all estimates, and I have no idea what Blizzard Entertainment's actual running costs for server management are, nor am I an IT specialist. This is based on information I can gather publicly on the web. A good example of this is based on the NCSoft Q1 2016 earnings report. NCSoft is fairly flexible and transparent when it comes to the money that they're bringing in, and they do make a note of pointing out rent, bandwidth costs, outsourced labor costs, and outsourced R&D. We can assume that at least the rent and bandwidth are partially related to NCSoft's running of these MMORPGs. I'm going to use the whole numbers for all 4 of these, assuming that they are all in some way tied to MMORPG server management. Then we're kind of overkilling and we can show a good example. This comes out to about 10 billion won, or about $8 million every 3 months, which comes down to about just under 3 million USD a month. Something 2.93 million USD per month to run those servers. That might seem like a lot of money until you realize that they are running 6 MMORPGs from the Lineage series to Guild Wars 2 to Blade and Soul to Wildstar, and then you also realize that Guild Wars 2 alone more than covered those costs for the same period on the same balance sheet. There are a lot of other costs to associate with running a business, but looking at these numbers as a baseline example, we can see that server costs aren't necessarily that high anymore. World of Warcraft's costs could be substantially higher, but we can also assume that these numbers are somewhat scalable. So the massive subscription income that's coming from World of Warcraft can be said to likely not be majoritively going towards server management anymore. The long point I'm trying to make is that eventually subscription fees became an unwritten agreement between consumers and developers, which stated that we will pay you $15 a month to keep the lights on, and you provide us with interesting content to justify that $15 a month. And that's kind of been the way it's been for a very long time. In the era where MMORPGs are free to play and that even small MMOs can keep themselves running on a simple cash shop, is it really justifiable to say that the $15 a month we're paying into majoritively goes into keeping the server lights on? I don't think it does anymore, which means the $15 a month we're paying is for content. Which brings us back to the original question of this video. Is Hellfire Citadel worth $210? Absolutely not. Delays and content droughts are a thing that exist, but going over a year without new content while still being expected to pay $15 a month to enter the game world is absolutely absurd. To get a really good idea as to why this is so wrong, we need to look at the competition in the marketplace. There's two other major subscription MMORPGs out there. EVE Online had up until last year promised 2 expansions per year and now has switched to at least 1 expansion per year and a bunch of smaller quality of life content patches throughout the year, while Final Fantasy XIV, the second major opposition, releases multiple content patches per year and uses small 0.5 bridging patches to bridge long content gaps with smaller injections of a few new toys. This has meant that Final Fantasy XIV hasn't had a content drought longer than 6 months in its history. Sticking to stable and short-term content releases makes the subscription model absolutely viable these days, I honestly believe. EVE Online and Final Fantasy are doing fine, and they have very quick content release cycles and very stable content release cycles. But World of Warcraft has these massive content droughts, and you start to wonder why so many people are fleeing the game. And they're totally justified in that, because that $15 a month isn't just to keep the server lights on. If it were to just keep the server lights on, we would be paying $5 a month, $3 a month at this rate. I don't know what WoW's server costs are. Again, I'm not an expert, but it cannot be at the rate it was at in 2004. That means when you're waiting 14 months for new content in the game that you're paying $15 a month to play, it becomes an incredibly hard pill to swallow, because there are so many more interesting things to spend that money on. Not just the same content, time and time again. Then again, I don't know, maybe I just spend it on hookers and blow. I don't fucking know. Hello again, and thank you very much for watching this video on content droughts in games like World of Warcraft. I hope you've enjoyed this little video, this exploration into subscriptions, content, and how they kind of work together. And if you did, please do like and subscribe. It means a lot to me. I appreciate every like, comment, everything. You got anything to say? Toss it down in the comments. I love talking to you guys about all sorts of ideas when we come to these big discussion videos like this. Otherwise, thank you very much, and you continue to have a great one.